So getting ready to close our loan, one of the things we have to do in advance of closing, I'm going to say well in advance of closing, is a flood determination. You don't want to be waiting to the last minute, because if you do the determination and it comes back that the collateral is in a 100-year floodplain, that's going to push your closing date back very likely, because now the borrower has to go and decide whether or not they even want to go through with the transaction if we're talking about a purchase, but maybe even an equity. Maybe they don't want to do that now because of the cost of flood insurance. They have to shop for flood insurance and determine the best product for them. And so get these done early on so you and the borrower both know what you're looking at as far as the flood insurance requirements or lack thereof in connection with the transaction. So the flood determination, we've kind of knocked out letter A, letter B, and letter C. Reasonable time before closing, that's up to you. Get it done early and early on in the process. I guess it doesn't use the word reasonable, but has to be done before closing. Don't wait on it because it could set things back if it does come back in a 100-year floodplain. Page 373, it's got to be guaranteed to the bank. Most of us these days reach out to third parties. That's fine. Just make sure they're guaranteeing the accuracy of the information to you. Prior determinations. So we've pulled a determination in connection with a property. Now we're doing another loan based on that same property. Can we rely on that prior determination? The regulation states that it's allowed if certain criteria are present and accounted for. It's got to be less than 7 years old. In other words, the determination I did prior that I'm trying to utilize with this new loan has to be less than 7 years old. Why 7 years? That's just the number. They don't have a why for this one. I like to explain it. This one doesn't have one. It has to be on the flood determination form. And you can see we've got that up on the screen. And then the map has to be the same map. What do you mean? Well, 7 years ago, the determination that's less than 7 years old was based on a flood map. That map has a date associated with it. The map that's currently in place today has to be the same exact map. In other words, it has to be dated the same. So if the map was dated 2017, as long as the map's still dated 2017 that property is associated with, we're good to go. But if that map has been updated, even though that property may not have been affected, if the map has been redated, then you have to do a new determination. So on the form, less than 7 years old, and the map cannot have changed since the prior determination. If the map has changed, regardless if the property is still the same rating, you cannot rely on that prior determination. There's a real easy way to determine whether or not maps have changed. The link at the very bottom of page 373 underneath number 3, the FEMA Map Service Center. If you go to that link and type in your property's address, it will bring up the current map associated with that property. Check the date. If the date is the same as your determination that's less than 7 years old, you're golden. If it's not the same date, you've got to do a new determination in connection with that transaction. Page 374, letter F, life of loan monitoring, not required by the regulations and the laws, but it is worth every penny. Because you see, here's how the flood rules work. If you ever acquire knowledge that a property is uninsured or underinsured, you have to go through the forced placement requirements. It's really hard to argue that you didn't know that the flood maps were changing when they're blasted on the news and the newspapers and you've got customers that aren't happy about it. So it's worth every penny. Plus, if you do acquire knowledge and you don't have a provider doing this for you, then you have to go out and manually do it, or you have to submit your entire database. So it's best to pay the few dollars, and it's usually quite minimal, and you can pass it on to the customer for life of loan monitoring. But again, not required by the laws or the regulations. We've got a copy of the current form beginning on page 375, going through page 377. Now, I want you to make note of something on this. The instructions for the form are page 375, 376. On page 377, you'll see in the upper right-hand corner, there's an expiration date of 9/30/2023. This is the new form. Some of you may still be utilizing the older form. That's likely okay. If you have any concern, you need to reach out to your examiners. That's what FEMA's website states that you are to do. If you're for some reason using the old form still, you find out from your regulator what they want you to do moving forward. I'm going to recommend that you reach out to your forms provider and find out if they haven't, when they're going to update to this new form. Now, what's the big change from the old form to the new form? Nothing. Hey, they put a new date on it. They reworded a couple things, but the boxes, the outcome, how they do the work, all the same. Nothing's changed there. But you're going to want to update to the new form as soon as you can so that examiners aren't looking at it going, why aren't you using the new form? I don't know if they'll cite you for it, but we do want to make sure that we update. Now, you're probably going, wait a minute, this thing's going to expire before the end of this year. Yep. And then we'll be on an expired form again, just like we were on the previous one. The previous one had an expiration date of 2018. We were all required to utilize that because there was no other form until November of last year. It wasn't until November of last year that this new one surfaced with very little information, even to this day, provided about it. Again, FEMA's website says contact your regulator if you have questions on it. I would simply reach out to my vendor and say, when are we going to get the information so we can begin using this new form going forward?